I'm going to now bring up to the stage the co-lead counsel in the historic litigation against the NFL regarding concussions, co-lead count and distinguished alumni of Villanova School of Law. Please welcome Saul Weiss.
Thanks. David's a tough act to follow.
Yes, he is. But you're up to it, I know. For those who didn't know, in August, historic, as I mentioned, a settlement between the NFL and the thousands of plaintiffs suing the NFL about concussions, what I thought was the biggest issue going forward in terms of the continued prosperity of the NFL. Well, it came to a settlement, and one of the people directly behind that settlement is sitting to my right, Saul Weiss. Now we're at a point where it's continuing towards final resolution with a bit of a snag along the way, but Saul will explain that. Saul, first of all, how'd you get involved in representing these? We talked about this last year, and where do things stand right now?
Well, I got started probably 4 years ago. My ex-partner, Ned Ehrlich, who some of you know, represented injured athletes in their comp cases for years, and talked to Ned about getting some of the guys together who had suffered head injuries and were having some problems. The NFLPA wasn't really keen on that idea, but then my partner Larry Coben in Arizona, who does a lot of catastrophically injured cases, a lot of college and high school kids who are quads or paraplegic because of playing football and the helmets didn't protect them because they can't. We started investigating, looking into it, meeting with doctors, meeting with some players, and we filed a federal lawsuit, I guess, in August, right after the Girardi firm filed cases in state court in California. And just mushroomed from there.
What was it like dealing with the families, dealing with players that had issues? Was it a different experience than your normal law practice?
It's much different. To see some of these families torn because the husband, the father, is not the same person he was before. These men can't deal with depression. It's not treatable by medication, the form that they have. They forget things. They have a lot of anger issues, and they can't hold a job. They really can't have a meaningful relationship, and their lives are upside down. One of the guys, Ray Easterling, who was very active when we filed the first case, would call my partner Larry quite frequently. I can't handle it. It's not going to work. And try as we may, he committed suicide. Ray was very vocal. There are other people we represent who are very vocal, whose brains are scrambled. And it's just a horrible way to live.
I know you have limitations on what you can say, but take us inside, if you will, the settlement talks last summer.
There were a lot of talks. They went on for a long period of time. We were under the guidance of Judge Brody to keep quiet, keep it out of the media. It was a smart way to operate, and the NFL's tough. Ask David. We did get to a point where there was enough money on the table to take care of the sick players and their families, and that's the time you make the deal. And we did.
That was August.
That was August.
Since then, there was a denial of preliminary approval based on, you can describe it better than I can, but the judge not seeing enough financial information.
The judge looked at the number of players, did a simple math calculation she thought was probing, and decided she wanted someone to tell her, independent, that there was enough money to pay these players for 60 years if they got sick during that time period. We were very comfortable. We knew there was enough money. We had spent months with economists and actuaries assuring ourselves that the deal was right and fair. So she did a good thing for the players. She appointed Perry Gulkin out of New York, and he's looking at the financial side of this case and settlement. I'm sure he'll make his mind up shortly, and we'll hear from the judge again.
Has that financial information been submitted?
His recommendation has not been submitted. We did supply him with all of our data, all of our models. Both sides did independently, and he's working through it.
How do you respond to some of the criticisms you've gotten personally, Saul, about not sharing all the data and all the information with the other co-counsels in this massive litigation?
Because it's a class settlement, we just can't turn it over to the public. We've asked the judge for guidance, as you know, and she hasn't ordered us to turn it over either. So it's before the special master. I'm sure once he issues his findings, it'll all be made public, and people have an opportunity to take a look at it.
And the criticism, and I know this is what I do, and the criticism that a $9 billion gross revenue business like the NFL settling for less than $1 billion going forward for 60 years, that wasn't enough.
Well, when we did our analysis and we had world-class experts guide us and instruct us, we knew there was enough money. And so we had a choice to make. You want to go along 4 or 5 years down the road, test some very difficult legal hurdles, some very good defenses the NFL had, not only preemption, which is the collective bargaining agreement issue, workers' comp defense, statute of limitations, causation. How is a player going to prove that the injuries he has now came just from pro football? They could have come from high school or college. All that had to be put into the picture. And when you look at it objectively, it didn't make a difference how much money the NFL has. It's, was it enough money to take care of the problem? And it was.
So where we stand now?
We're waiting for the special master to report to the judge, and the judge to decide what she's going to do next.
Your best guess, timing-wise, on the litigation, but I think more importantly, what people want to know is when will the players get their money?
When the court preliminary approves the settlement, there'll be at least 90, maybe 120, 150 days until there's a fairness hearing where all this will be put on the record in the courtroom, and those players and their lawyers who think it's not enough money or contest whether they're going to contest will have an opportunity to be heard and put in evidence that they think the court should hear, and then should make a decision. Once it's final, we hope we can get the program running in a couple of months and get these people, their families paid, those who qualify now. And there's a lot of players that will qualify now for compensation.
You represent a lot of injured plaintiffs.
Yes.
Again, I asked a little bit about this before. The difference in dealing with injured football players and their families, is it a different level of, from your end, empathy, concern, or different type of representation with football players and their families?
I thought so initially, but not really. These are profoundly injured people. Their lives have been altered. Some of them are dead. And their families deserve compensation. The fact that the defendant is the NFL, that probably adds a little to the mix. But as David said, they're regular people. Alex Rodriguez, a regular guy. You don't see that from these guys because they've been in the public for many years entertaining fans by playing football, but they're just like you and I. Same problems, same needs, and their rights were violated.
What do you think of football?
It's a fascinating game. It's a great sport. And as long as they protect the safety of the players, it's fine.
You comfortable that they are?
A lot of changes, a lot of good changes. And I think the players are being protected. I think the players are more aware of the risk of sitting out when you're dinged. Reporting these problems and not living in the machismo world, because you can see what happens 10 or 15 years after they stop playing.
This may not be something you can answer as well, but my continued question is, how do we protect players from themselves? They want to play. And aside from mothers and fathers keeping their kids from playing, how do we protect professional athletes from playing through this? It's not a knee, it's not an ankle, it's not a shoulder. It's something people don't see. How do we stop?
Through education and making athletes aware of the risks, that your head's an important part of your body, and you've got to protect your head just like you protect your ankles, knees, your hands, your arms. I can tell you that at the high school level, there's a lot more awareness about closed-head injuries, and many of the high school trainers and coaches are keeping kids out in lacrosse, soccer, not just football, when these kids get a brain injury or head injury. As minor as you might think it is, unless they go back to baseline, they shouldn't play. And that's the key. And there's studies out there that suggest that when your head goes back to baseline and you have no real symptoms, you can resume athletic endeavors. The problem is these kids are going back when they're still injured, and that's when the brain is still sensitive and can get further injury. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean you don't have it.
Back to the litigation, you expect a fair number of players to opt out and allow themselves to sue the NFL separately?
I would think there will be not many players who opt out, because when players understand what the deal is and we talk to them, we have overwhelming acceptance of the program. Not just for the money they're going to get if they're severely injured, but for the neurocognitive testing that they will get free, with an independent network of neuropsychologists and neurologists to evaluate where they are presently, and if they should get worse, or if they come up abnormal, they're going to get further medical care. It's a good program.
And you're confident that going out decades, 60 years, I believe, this money will cover the injured players?
Yes, I am. And the people that we hired to do the analysis tell us it's so. I have no reason to doubt them. I've looked at the models. They appear appropriate to me. Very appropriate. And there will be some money left at the end of 60 years.
Saul, thank you.
Thank
Saul
you.
Weiss.